Did you know that the life of Pontius Pilate, the man who authorized the crucifixion of Jesus, ended in mystery and tragedy? Imagine bearing the burden of one of history's most controversial decisions and suffering the consequences in isolation. Pilate, the Roman governor of Judea, is a figure shrouded in both historical and religious intrigue. What became of him after that fateful day? This tale intertwines biblical, historical, and traditional accounts, offering a glimpse into a life overshadowed by a single, momentous act. Pilate's role in the crucifixion is detailed in the New Testament Gospels, where his hesitation and ultimate decision are laid bare. His interactions with Jesus and the pressure from Jewish authorities are documented in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Meanwhile, the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus and the Roman philosopher Philo of Alexandria provide additional context on Pilate's governance in Judea. By weaving together these sources, a more nuanced picture emerges of Pilate, a man trapped by the complexities of his time and the weight of his decisions. Pilate, the Roman governor of Judea, found himself caught in a dangerous predicament. The Jewish religious leaders demanded the crucifixion of Jesus, accusing him of blasphemy. However, Pilate saw no crime in Jesus. He made several attempts to release Jesus, even proposing the customary release of a prisoner during Passover, but the crowd chose Barabbas over Jesus. Despite his reluctance, Pilate eventually capitulated to the crowd's demands, symbolically washing his hands to absolve himself of responsibility for Jesus' death. This act of avoidance, however, would become emblematic of cowardice and injustice throughout history. The biblical narrative shows Pilate's futile attempts to satisfy the crowd, including having Jesus flogged, hoping that a lesser punishment would suffice to appease the Jewish leaders. This moment not only sealed Jesus' fate, but also set the stage for Pilate's own downfall, as his actions would be scrutinized and condemned for centuries to come. Pilate was acutely aware of the political instability in the region. Jerusalem was alive with the energy of Passover, and the presence of Jesus, hailed by many as a prophet, only heightened the tension. The religious leaders accused Jesus of inciting rebellion against Rome, a charge that could justify his execution under Roman law. Pilate was in a bind. Releasing Jesus risked a Jewish revolt. Condemning him meant authorizing the death of an innocent man. Ultimately, to prevent an uprising, Pilate gave in to the demands of the leaders and the mob. Little did he know that this decision would haunt him for the rest of his days. While the Bible does not delve into Pilate's thoughts, his actions suggest a man under immense pressure, struggling to balance justice with the need to maintain order. History suggests that the weight of this choice lingered heavily on Pilate. While Pilate was presiding over Jesus' trial, his wife, Claudia Procula, had a disturbing dream. She sent a message to Pilate, urging him to have nothing to do with that righteous man. This dream is only mentioned in the Gospel of Matthew, and its origins and implications remain enigmatic. Some interpret it as a divine intervention aimed at preventing Jesus' crucifixion. Claudia Procula's brief appearance in the biblical accounts highlights Pilate's internal conflict. She had suffered deeply because of that dream, which she believed to be a divine warning. Ignoring this warning would be a mistake that would torment Pilate for the rest of his life. Christian tradition later sanctified Claudia Procula in some denominations, reflecting the perceived significance of her role in the Passion narrative. Claudia's figure is sometimes seen as the voice of conscience, attempting to intervene during a moment of moral crisis. Her ominous dream adds a supernatural element to the story, hinting that greater forces were at play during the trial. Jesus was crucified under Pilate's orders, with the inscription on the cross reading, "Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews." This inscription, written in Hebrew, Latin and Greek, was Pilate's way of affirming the accusation that Jesus claimed to be a king, an act of treason against Caesar. As Jesus suffered, Pilate wrestled with his doubts and guilt. The crucifixion of Jesus is central to the Gospels, described in vivid detail, including the reactions of onlookers and the supernatural events that accompanied it, such as the darkening of the sky and the tearing of the temple veil. These occurrences only added to Pilate's burden as he witnessed signs that seemed to confirm Jesus' divine innocence. The Bible presents the crucifixion not merely as a historical event, but as a cosmic confrontation between good and evil. Historically, crucifixion was a brutal method reserved for the worst criminals, intended to publicly shame and torture. Pilate's decision to proceed with this form of execution, despite his misgivings, reveals the extreme pressure he faced and the complex political and social dynamics of his position. After the crucifixion, Pilate became consumed by guilt over his decision. Manipulated by the crowd and the religious leaders, his conscience was tormented. The words of Jesus echoed in his mind, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do." Pilate's guilt grew daily, eventually becoming unbearable. Although the Bible does not delve into Pilate's internal turmoil, it is reasonable to infer the psychological impact of his actions based on the gravity of the situation. Christian tradition suggests that Pilate never fully escaped the weight of his role in Jesus' death, a burden that would mar the remainder of his life. The apocryphal Gospels and other extra-canonical sources, such as the Ethiopian Orthodox Church tradition, delve deeper into Pilate's torment, depicting a man destroyed by guilt. His symbolic act of washing his hands did nothing to cleanse him of the moral stain he carried, a reminder that must have haunted him constantly. The Ethiopian Orthodox tradition even holds that Pilate eventually converted to Christianity, seeking redemption for his sins, though this interpretation is largely speculative and not universally accepted. When the guards at Jesus' tomb reported that he had risen, it caused a stir among the Jewish leaders and Pilate. In an attempt to suppress the truth, Pilate bribed the guards to spread a falsehood, but the news of Jesus' resurrection spread quickly, exacerbating Pilate's torment. The resurrection, the cornerstone of Christian faith, is confirmed by the Gospels and the epistles of the New Testament. For Pilate, the resurrection was a crisis of conscience and authority. If Jesus had indeed risen, it not only validated Jesus' divine claims, but also meant that Pilate had condemned an innocent man to death. Pilate's efforts to cover up the resurrection reflect his struggle to maintain control and his sanity in the face of events that defied both logic and Roman authority. Moreover, the rapid spread of Christianity in the following decades, including the conversion of many Jews and Gentiles, amplified the significance of the resurrection and the implications of Pilate's decision. His attempts to suppress the truth of the resurrection highlight the ongoing clash between the temporal power of Rome and the burgeoning spiritual power of Christianity. Emperor Tiberius received conflicting reports about the events in Judea, placing Pilate in a precarious position. Pilate was already unpopular due to his brutal repression and disregard for Jewish customs. Both Flavius Josephus and Philo of Alexandria depict Pilate as a ruthless governor whose actions often provoked Jewish anger. One of Pilate's most notorious acts was using temple funds to build an aqueduct, sparking outrage among the Jews. The situation worsened when he was called back to Rome to account for his actions. Pilate's removal from office followed an incident involving the massacre of Samaritans on Mount Gerizim, which, along with his other actions, led to his recall by Lucius Vitellius, governor of Syria. Pilate faced a rigorous investigation in Rome, marking the end of his political career. The political fallout from his tenure in Judea had significant consequences for both him and the province he once governed. The political turmoil during Pilate's administration and his subsequent downfall highlight the challenges of Roman governance in the provinces, where enforcing Roman authority often clashed with local traditions and aspirations. In Rome, Pilate faced a grueling investigation. Tiberius was enraged by the turmoil Pilate had caused in Judea, and Pilate's political enemies seized the opportunity to destroy him. He was stripped of his office and exiled. Claudia, his wife, continued to be plagued by nightmares, while Pilate, consumed by guilt, withdrew from public life. Tradition suggests that Pilate was not formally tried, but was instead forced into retirement. Some apocryphal accounts, like the Acts of Pilate, offer alternative narratives of his later life, often portraying him as a figure of remorse and penance. Pilate's death remains an enigma, with various traditions offering different endings to his life. Some historical accounts suggest he committed suicide, unable to bear the weight of his actions and the shame of his exile. Eusebius of Caesarea, a 4th century church historian, mentions Pilate's suicide under Caligula's reign. Other versions claim he died naturally, while some Christian traditions believe he sought forgiveness and became a martyr. Regardless of the details, Pilate's legacy is inextricably tied to the tragic decision that forever altered the course of history. The death of Pontius Pilate remains cloaked in mystery. Some historical records suggest that he took his own life, overwhelmed by the burden of his actions and the shame of his exile. Eusebius of Caesarea, a 4th century church historian, notes that Pilate ended his life during the reign of Caligula. Other accounts claim he died naturally, while certain Christian traditions hold that he sought redemption and was martyred. Nevertheless, his legacy is forever tied to the fateful decision that altered the course of history. Pilate's tragic demise, regardless of the precise details, underscores the profound psychological and spiritual consequences of his actions. His story stands as a poignant reminder of the repercussions of moral compromise and the lasting impact of our choices. The uncertainty surrounding Pilate's death only deepens the sense of mystery and tragedy associated with his figure, leaving space for diverse interpretations in both historical and theological discussions. His life and death have inspired countless analyses over the centuries, each offering unique insights into his role in one of history's most pivotal moments.